Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Water Cooler Chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's delegating, broadcasting, orchestrating, transcoding, or anything to do with the Livepeer ecosystem. We're here to ask questions and get answers. So today we do have an agenda ahead of us. We have a Q&A session with Wade Paterson, who is the host of the Show Me the Crypto podcast. Now, I actually personally know Wade. I've known him for a few years. And actually, it took me a few years to find out he was so into crypto. And when we had this amazing conversation about it, I was like, "Oh yes, we've got to get you on here for a Q&A session." So Wade has many years been running the podcast, interviewing some very influential people in the space, with over 100 episodes released. The link to the show is actually in the general contact, the general chat where I originally introduced him. But what I'd like to do today is cover topics around, Web3 trends, crypto trends, and just get some insight from Wade around the general kind of overview of the crypto market based on his interviews with experienced people, developers, and thought leaders within the industry. So, Wade, do you want to get us kicked off a little bit with an introduction of who you are, how you got into crypto, and just start us off with some of your background.
Absolutely, happy to. First off, thanks so much, Titan. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, for listening to this. I'm honored. I'm usually the one interviewing others, so it's a rare treat for me to be able to be the guest and chat a little bit about my experience. But we launched Show Me the Crypto, so it's myself and my co-host Alf Lonegren who launched the show back in December 2020. And at the time, we didn't know. Like we decided we'd do a couple episodes and see if we liked this whole podcasting thing. But it was a super interesting time if you can think back to December 2020, because we were just kind of at the beginning of the bull market. And then from there was just this insane couple years where things like NFTs were things I wasn't aware of prior to December 2020, and the market just kind of exploded. And so our show has taken on a weird path and trajectory of initially we thought we'd mostly be chatting to founders, but somehow we ended up interviewing the mayor of Miami. We interviewed Playboy Playmate Amanda Cerny. We've interviewed a few interesting people along the ride, so it's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. That's that's a great introduction, and it's interesting that you got to interview such a different variety of people. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of people that you're interviewing? Do you believe that crypto is starting to go mainstream? Like, what's your opinion on this? Or are we just so early it's hard to tell?
I think that right now it doesn't feel like it. And I mean, that's kind of the thing with bull markets and bear markets. I think that in 2021, especially with NFTs in particular blowing up, and it was kind of like all of a sudden this group of people who were interested in art, culture was being brought into this space. And I'm always excited at the gateway things that are going to get people into the space. And NFTs seem to really do that. So it felt a lot more mainstream. But now that we're in a bear market and everything's down, I mean, you go to a typical like public place, a coffee shop, there's not a lot of conversations right now around the crypto space. It doesn't feel like, at least in my experience, whereas back in 2021, 2022, it felt more like that. You'd be in random public places and people would be like, have you heard of Bitcoin? What's the deal with NFTs? That was the conversation. But I think the thing that's cool is the people who are around right now, all of you who are listening to this in the depths of a crypto winter 2023, like this is the best time to be in the space because the real stuff is being built right now. And I think that inevitably we will have another bull market that, whether you like it or not, the price attention or the price action does bring a lot of attention into the space. And so once we hit that bull market again, the people who are in the space now, I truly believe are the ones who people remember. They remember who was around in the tough times, and it really is beneficial. So are we going mainstream? Slowly but surely. Right now, it doesn't feel like it, but I think a couple years from now, um, we'll take an even bigger step. And just like NFTs in 2021, the next thing will bring more and more people into the space.
Very cool. I like it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dig a little deeper now. I'm going to get a bit more specific. So I don't know how much you're aware of the Livepeer protocol, Wade, but we're what's called a DPIN protocol, which I believe was coined just this year, which is a decentralized infrastructure provider protocol. And so I didn't actually spell out the actual acronym. I have to look it up, but DPIN is what it's called. And what we do is we provide a decentralized video processing service, essentially, right? So think of your, your Facebook Live, your Instagram Live, your one-to-many apps, your Twitch, all these platforms need video infrastructure. And with this whole Web3 movement, we're getting, dApps that are like decentralized, right? Decentralized social media, decentralized web streaming applications. And so there's a lot of, adoption, but also a lot of hesitation, people leaving Web 2. What is your opinion on the state of Web 2 social platforms, like the Twitters and the Twitches? What's your opinion on that? And do you see there be an adoption of Web 3 platforms in the future?
I certainly hope so. First off, thanks for that explanation about Livepeer. I know going back a couple of years when you explained it to me initially, it made a lot of sense. And I'll be the first to admit my technical knowledge is shockingly low for someone who's been kind of interested in blockchain since 2016. I mean, I still sometimes stumble to find the words to explain basic things, like even how blockchain tech works to my friends and family. And I start to like clam up and forget like the right descriptions. And so, but I actually think that maybe that's a positive thing for the podcast, because what we want to do is we want to create unintimidating content for people who are new to the space, because a lot of times in Web3, in crypto, we are super jargony, we are super, like the terms that we use, we may all be familiar with them, but people on the outside world, like that large percentage of people who aren't comfortable with this space, I think that they just don't know what the hell we're talking about sometimes. And so I think that's an important piece. I think this whole social media question is super interesting, and like the state of Web 2 social media and whether it can be Web 3. And hopefully it's okay if I tell just kind of a quick story. Cut me off if I'm too long-winded here. But how I first got into the space was through a platform called Steemit at the time in 2016. Some people may be familiar with that. You may not be familiar. It's since changed, or at least the core community has changed to something called Hive, which some people are still blogging on now. But the idea was that it was almost this cross between Medium, the website, which is a blogging website, and Reddit, which of course many people are familiar with. And the idea was you create a blog post on Steemit, which was a blockchain on the Steem blockchain. You create a blog post, and then other Steemit users could choose to upvote that content. And the content that was upvoted, especially by those who owned the most Steem, so had kind of the biggest stake in the ecosystem, that was rewarded with a cryptocurrency called Steem and Steem-backed dollars. And of course, at that time, 2016, I had this aha moment because I created this account, I started blogging, and over time, I started to earn a little bit more of this Steem, which to me meant nothing. I had no idea what cryptocurrency even really was all about. But the first aha moment for me was when I was able to actually cash that out. So then I used Poloniex at the time, transferred it to Bitcoin, And then I put that into through Quadriga, a super sketchy Canadian exchange that went down, but I was able to turn that into Canadian dollars. Thankfully, got my money out of Quadriga before the founder disappeared. But anyways, that was kind of my first aha moment of cryptocurrency. And so I loved that as a gateway drug. Here was the problem, and here's probably the reason why many people on this call or listening in have never really experimented with Steemit or Hive, and that is it didn't feel like an authentic social media experience because it felt like everyone was just the incentive was to earn money. Like at the end of the day, people wanted to blog and do so in a way that would earn money. And what it turned into was just kind of this disingenuous environment that was almost a circle jerk at times where other people were upvoting each other in order to get more rewards. And it took away from the authentic social media feel. Now, I'm not overall speaking for the whole platform, but I think that's been a huge challenge is how do we do this well? How do we make social media so it's a situation where it's got to be easy, first off, but still have all the features and benefits of a Web3 environment. I mean, a big example, looking at even what has happened recently with threads coming out from Meta. So, kind of for the first time, we're seeing what can happen when you take something where people have an audience built up, like Instagram, and then boom, instantly they're able to port their full Instagram audience onto something like Threads. And now you're not starting from scratch. And I think that's one of the big benefits of what Web3 can offer is that you have this audience, you can take them with you from platform to platform in the Web3 environment. And it's not like each individual Web2 space, like Twitter owns your audience, YouTube owns your audience, and they can decide in a heartbeat whether or not to take you down, to cancel your account, your channel, and that's a scary thing. And I'm also scared that, while we kind of notice this audience sharing within Meta, I'm still very aware that that's the Meta environment. They own all of that. And so I want to see us be able to get over to Web3 where we have our own ownership. The challenge is how do you do that in a way that it has to be as easy, if not easier, than the current Web2 social media experience. And that's a big challenge.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I picked out like 4 things in that story that I found just fascinating, which was the first one was the aha moment about how you cashed out based on your crypto earnings and it all of a sudden became realized, right? That's a pretty powerful moment. I can imagine how many crypto super users get it. They first join something, and they think, oh, what is this? And then it ends up in something they're familiar with, and they go, wow, this is pretty powerful, right? Getting paid from random people on the internet.
100%. And people seem to vilify that during bull markets. People are like, oh, you you got paper hands, you got to have diamond hands, you got to hold on to this like hodl, like blah, 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 blah. And I get it. You don't want a bunch of people just selling off and leaving, but I'm actually the opposite. When I hear new people are getting into the space and they've made some gains, I actually tell them, I'm like, if you want, go ahead and realize those gains, convert them back into whatever your currency is. Obviously, long term, I am bullish on blockchain in the crypto space, but I just know how powerful that was for me to have that realization of this is real value. Like whatever it is, whether it was Steemit, whether it was Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever the cryptocurrency, it's powerful when you go through that process of exchanging that and then seeing that realized in a currency that you're more familiar with using. For me, that's Canadian dollars. That's super powerful. So, that's one thing I'd mention is rather than just vilifying that idea of like, oh, never cash out, you always got to hold on to everything. I get it long term why you want to encourage people to be invested in this space because I do believe that, cryptocurrencies, especially some of the I don't know if you use the word blue chip, but like some of the ones that we know are going to be around for a long time, like Ethereum, that is going to perform better than the dollar over time. I would bet anything on that. However, allow people to have that experience, allow them to get there on their own so that it's not just them watching their crypto portfolio go way up and then way down and then way up and ride that roller coaster.
Definitely. I want to talk a bit about pain points for Web 2 and some of your guests that you've had on your show. So the first question is, have you or any of your guests been canceled, and how has that affected them or yourself?
That's a good question. Um, have any of our guests been canceled?
Or at least publicly talked about it on your show, or is this
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want
So
to cover
somebody
some of
comes.
the pain points of Web 2 and just kind of see where we're trending from, kind of thing.
Totally, totally. Yeah, so somebody that comes to mind, we had her on our show in, I want to say, the spring of 2021. And what I love about it is that we're a little bit agnostic. And so what I find in the space from time to time is that there's a lot of maximalism. And I get it. People have their investments in different cryptocurrencies or different projects. Of course, they want to see those things do well. But what I'm not a big fan of is when people are so like everything else is terrible. And, let's say I'm an ETH maxi and I'm just like, all these other, Solana's terrible, Cardano's terrible, like all of these things. I'm not a big fan of that. I get people arguing why certain chains are better than others, but I really do think that we benefit when the whole industry benefits and that there's room for different projects. And I'm kind of a believer in a multi-chain future. I'm going to answer your question. I'm not just diverting from it, Titan, but I appreciate it. So the point that I bring up there is that we do have guests that have ranging political viewpoints. They have ranging, chains that they're talking about. We had on the pod Leah Hilpern, and she is somebody who definitely I think you categorize as a little bit right wing. She has some like she's interviewed Andrew Tate. She has a lot of his. She believes in a lot of what his messaging is positive and that kind of thing. And she puts out that perspective, which is completely within her rights to have that perspective. I don't know if she's been officially like had her Twitter account, for example, suspended, but I do know that a number of accounts have blocked her, and I do think some of her YouTube videos have been brought down. So that would be some specific examples from one of our guests who she has seen the direct implications of having a certain viewpoint and that not aligning with the values of the Web 2 social network.
Definitely. Yeah. So, like, the reason I ask these kind of questions is because, our community is basically all about Web3 adoption, specifically any type of application that uses video, right? So, for those that are not aware, basically all video that gets published on the internet needs to be transcoded, right, into multiple bit rates so that it fits different screen sizes. Turns out this is a very cost and compute intense thing to do. And Livepeer, you can do it somewhere between 2 to 10x cheaper than traditional Web 2 marketplaces. So we're putting a large bet on the adoption of these Web 3 platforms where you own your own social graph. You use decentralized infrastructure to maintain the social media sites. You have custom built algorithms based on your own platform. So with that being said, and those all drive demand for the Livepeer network, right? Which is what orchestrators and these transcoders get paid for doing. So my question to you, Wade, is also what other platforms are you using to publish your podcast other than YouTube, or are you basically just on YouTube primarily? Like, what is your feel with where your podcast is going?
Great question, and I'd love to throw it back to you at some point to just because I'm interested from your perspective and the community's perspective, Titan, about and maybe we can get into that later, but some of the challenges maybe with we talk about the downside of Web 2 kind of having a certain editorial opinion of what's okay and taking certain things down. But at the same time, there is the counter argument of, well, there is danger if people are just, if we're talking about videos, there's certain videos that we don't want. Probably, we're talking about like murders or like extreme things, child pornography. There's probably all sorts of challenges there. And so I'd love to kind of hear, and maybe that doesn't fall into the realm at all of Livepeer. You're just kind of like allowing that that hosting to happen. And again, I'm probably butchering these technical terms, so my apologies for that. But okay, what are we using to put out the podcast? We do upload all of our podcasts onto YouTube. So that's the number one place we go. But then we also distribute it onto all major podcast platforms. So audio first. So that would be Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We use a program called Anchor, which I think has been taken over by Spotify now, but that basically distributes to about 8 different podcasting platforms. And then we will splice up our interviews and share it in places like TikTok, Instagram, now on Threads, Twitter. And then so we're trying to hit that on all of your major Web 2 places. By the way, I still post everything to Hive, which is so we are still on the Web 3 side of things in terms of posting content to the blockchain. So we utilize that service. I'm always curious and wanting to know, because like Ulf and I, we do at times, we feel like frauds. We're like, wait a second, we're talking about how blockchain is the future, how we want everyone to come to this Web3 environment and be building in the space. And then we're like, but hold on a second, like we're distributing only on and we want to share and educate people so that they can learn about crypto. And if we're only doing that currently on Web3 platforms, we're probably not getting a very big audience at this point in time. In the future, it would be delightful to be able to fully move over into a Web3 environment. But that's kind of the challenge of where we're at right now. But we're constantly looking for ways to be more Web3. We released an NFT project earlier this year, which is tough to release an NFT in an NFT winter. I think we sold 4 out of the 100 we had for sale, which is okay. We call them our OG supporters. But we're constantly trying to find ways to put our money where our mouth is and be more immersed in this space.
That's some really good feedback, actually, because we're in a community where we want to promote these adoption of Web3 platforms that obviously utilize centralized infrastructure such as Livepeer, and so you're like this perfect incubator of a person that we get to listen to and say, what are your pain points? What makes you motivated? Great, use our Web3 platform where no one is, and you think, oh, that's very nice, but no one's there. So it's hard to make that leap, right? And so it's interesting to hear your pain points and publishing your content, but also then looking for that Web3 that Web3 underlying technology, but also still have it like Web 2 easy, right? So I find that very fascinating. Right now, I think one of the largest Web3 kind of like infrastructure or Web3 users of Livepeer is like Lens Protocol. Are you familiar with Lens Protocol?
Heard of it, but not super familiar.
Yeah, so Lens is that there's that social graph, right? It's this idea that your NFT is your profile, and it's on the EVM chain, right? So Ethereum or Polygon or wherever it's located. And then wherever you go, whatever website you go to, you take that social graph with you. So you take all your followers and who you're following to every app that you use. And then they build this little marketplace of content around, what you want to do. What do you want it to look like? Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, right? You take your social graph with you. And so Lens has a diverse, user base of different kind of like platforms, right? So the Lens Tube is obviously a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a knockoff of YouTube, right? But it's called LensTube, and you can post there, and anyone who follows you on Lens gets all your videos, and then you head over to Lenster, and you get a Twitter style, lens, and you go to xenon.xyz, and you get like a lens version of Twitch, which is all live streaming, which is where we're streaming right now, right? So this idea of like, you take your graph, you own your own graph, right? And so, but that takes adoption, and people have to care about it, and it takes time. In your experience talking amongst people, do people ever think about this, or are they still just very kind of leaves in the wind, just kind of go where the next trend is? Threads came out, I'm going to Threads.
Yeah, oh, sorry, was somebody jumping in there?
Well, I was going to chime in real quick here. I've been in the media broadcasting, whatever content market for many, many, many years, and my ears poked up when you're like, legalities as far as like people like Kick.com, they can stream the craziest stuff ever. My experience, it just depends on your local laws, right? So in the United States, as an internet provider or hosting provider, I have safe harbor. So if someone's doing something bad, it's going to take a federal judge to say you can't do this. Not just going to turn them off. Unlike YouTube or any other platform, they'll just turn you off because they don't want to deal with it. So when it comes to saying, hey, you want to stream your media and not have to worry about quote unquote Big Brother, shutting you down because you said a bad word or you did something that's questionable, not illegal, then that's how I look at it. But I know if I was a content provider and I want to be able to distribute my content, I don't want someone to say, oh, you can't do that. No, I'm going to go to one source and have it broadcasted everywhere. And if they shut that one source down, great. I still have my central source. So taking that with you, the broadcast with you is really key. And that's where I think this next generation of Web 3.0 is key, because you're not locked into a platform. Like if I build something on Squarespace, I have to use Squarespace. Oh, you don't like that website? Oh, they turn me off. Definitely. I don't like that idea. So.
Good comment, Andrew. Thanks for joining in on that. Yeah, it's very interesting, the challenges that at different jurisdictions and these kinds of things. Sorry, Wade. The question I believe was around just like this Web 2 adoption. Do you want to try and answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely, and great point, Andrew. I agree with you. Like, to me, it's crystal clear the advantage of Web3, and like you were saying, what Lens is aiming to do here is allow people, like, you've created your audience, you've done the work, Andrew, you've put out that content, and if you have an audience of people who are following it, I mean, you have the deserved right that, if you want to move to a different platform or anything like that, like, that's your audience. So I'm totally on board with that. I think that, Titan, going back to your question, what am I actually seeing? So we interview people in the space, and so a lot of them are also aware of these types of challenges and the interest of moving forward to that inevitable future. But do I hear it, like, now talking outside of kind of the crypto industry, that bubble that I'm involved in, and just like my everyday normie friends who are still like raise an eyebrow at crypto and like are skeptical, are they like, damn, I don't want to go on Instagram today because Meta owns all my data? I don't, like, they should be worried about it. They should be concerned. And I think that that's part of our role in educating people and getting them to understand what's happening. But do I think that's the reality today? Being completely honest, I don't think it's a majority of people. Threads is a great example, not to keep bringing up Threads, but like 100 million users joining that platform in days or hours or whatever it was. And it's just like these mind-blowing statistics. So like, unfortunately, these kind of Web 2 platforms are thriving, and I think that our number one task just has to be to make things such an easy, such a seamless process. And I always use the example of, having your wallet. So like even through MetaMask or something like that, they have simplified that process so much. Even still, it's so confusing. Like for the average person, it's so confusing. I've walked so many people through like, okay, you got to write down your seed phrase, never lose these words. If you ever lose these words, you won't have access, but never let anyone find those words. Because if you know what I mean? Like the whole process and that conversation, it's, for all of us, we get it. It doesn't seem that confusing, but for people who aren't familiar to the space and Web3 doesn't come natural, it's still, there's too much friction there. And so I think that more and more people are becoming aware of kind of some of the like the issues with the data ownership that these Web2 companies have. That's largely been thanks to, you know, some key documentaries. I know there was one on Netflix a couple of years ago, which kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to this type of thing. But I still think, unfortunately, we have a long way to go.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Does anyone else have any comments or questions they want to ask Wade about anything we've talked about or anything that is on their mind? I'll open it up to the floor here from the community to ask a question.
I see one from Troy here. And Troy, I'm wondering if you can provide me a little bit more context. So what do I think about the process of signing up for a wallet on Xenon?
Yeah, Wade, how you doing? So I actually am one of the guys who's building Xenon, and Xenon is a Web3 media platform, and like we've spent a lot of time like thinking through how we onboard people into like from Web2 into Web3, and we call it like the mom test, right? Like, can your mom come in here and use this platform and not get stuck somewhere? Meaning that like if you don't have a wallet, right? Like walking someone through how to install MetaMask, right? Like I've done it a million times. Sounds like you've done it a million times, and it's still confusing, right? Like all the private key stuff. So like I was just kind of curious. Like I used to use Steemit back in the day, and I go way back. Like I was into Bitcoin in like 2013, right? So I've seen the evolution of all this stuff for a while, and I do feel like we're kind of at the point where we have all these infrastructure plays that people have been building out for the last, you know, maybe 5 years. Like Livepeer is pretty far along at this point. We were really waiting, in my opinion, for the layer 2s to show up so that these infrastructure plays could actually work at a more cost-effective basis. Because on layer 1, it just seemed like you're never going to have all these plays working together. But now that we got layer 2s, we're definitely at this like application layer time period, in my opinion, where like actually getting in and using a Web3 application at cost using decentralized infrastructure makes sense. But I mean, I've kind of gone on a tangent here, but what I was trying to get to was like, if you look at Xenon, like we've really spent a lot of time like thinking about like, okay, we like all these little pressure points where like getting currency into the actual platform. What about gas? Like gas is a huge issue, right? I know you probably haven't played with it based on your response, but I would be kind of curious on how you feel, and we could just take this offline at some point, like if you go and use it as like a new user without using MetaMask, like how you feel about it, even getting credits into it. There's also like, you know, like fiat on-ramps. There's still these pain points, but I feel like we're almost there, that you can get through a lot of this stuff without having to like educate your friends all about Web3. And then at some point they realize, oh wow, I actually get to own my data. I get to own my social graph. Like one of the more things I thought that was really interesting about Threads was the main developer on it. He said that they wanted to use the same, I think it was the same backend as like Mastodon, like the same like technological infrastructure, which is kind of like owning a social graph, which is what Lens is. He said that the thing is that they just weren't able to get it out in time, and they just wanted to launch it as soon as possible. But the fact that a company as big as that is even talking about using a decentralized social graph that you can take with you no matter where you go is kind of a watershed moment, in my opinion, for like Web3 infrastructure. And I don't know if you'd heard about that, but it's like you can tell that these people are starting to build on top of these things. I personally like Lens, but that's just me.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Wade. You can reply to that.
I was just going to say, super interesting, Troy, and I'm always happy to meet a Steemit alum, and it sounds like you're a real OG in the space, going back to, that's kind of my year that I'm like, if you're 2013 or earlier, that's true OG status. So thanks so much for that, and I'll definitely have to check out Xenon. I'd throw a question back at you, actually, and just, that is, what have you found in terms of, like, I would imagine one of the biggest challenges is just getting people to start experimenting with that type of, like, with your wallet, and allow them to experience how easy it is. By the way, I love the mom test. My mom is probably like the perfect person because she's still scared of basic computers and like logging onto the internet. I remember the first time I had like an MSN Messenger conversation with my mom, and she asked me 3 security questions before we could continue with the conversation. So I love the mom test idea, but yeah, Troy, if I could just throw that back at you of, how are you getting people to experiment and start using this so that they can have that aha moment of how easy it is to use Xenon?
Yeah, so like the main thing here is like we allow for you to connect to our RPC nodes through using MetaMask or an external wallet, but then we also use an embedded wallet system called Privy that you can sign in using like any of your, like a traditional what you would consider OAuth signing in. So like you can sign in with like Google, you can sign in with Discord, you can sign in with Twitter, you can sign in with your Apple account. We also allow for SMS. And we'll probably have an email sign in there too. Now, what that does is then it shards your private keys and it gives you a wallet that's inside of like a third-party system. So no one has access to that wallet unless you have the PIN to that wallet, which you set up when you're setting up the first wallet. From there, you just have kind of an embedded wallet that you have to say like sign here, and you never have to like manage your private keys. You don't have to like, the only thing you have to remember is that PIN. But the PIN doesn't have to be some long string of, unrememberable numbers or whatever. It can be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. This has worked out phenomenally, honestly. Like I could look at my numbers right now, but I think so. Like 48% of our stuff is like, or actually, it's more than that. Sorry, it's over 50% use like an embedded wallet, right? And that's phenomenal. So like most of our users are not actually crypto native.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Where it gets really fun is we're going to have like a fiat on ramp. So like the big thing about it, the way our system works is,
hey Troy, I'm just going to cut you off for a second, just because I don't want to, like, I love Xenon and we're streaming there right now actually. So shout out to the Xenon people. I just want to go a little further because I know Wade has only got about 13 minutes left. Is that right, Wade? You got about to the top of the hour?
Yeah, I've got a hard stop at the top of the hour. Yeah.
Cool. So,
okay. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Maybe
Troy, we'll connect offline, Troy.
Sounds good, man.
Reach out to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Troy. Yeah. So while we're wrapping up in the last like 10 minutes here, if anyone else has any more in particular questions that they're dying to come in and ask, please jump in now. We'll be brief, but in the meantime, go ahead, Osman.
Yeah, I was going to ask Wade, or maybe pick his brain about two points. My first question would be like, where are you based, Wade? Like America or
Canada? Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada.
Oh, okay. Because I think for a couple of years now, I was just thinking about this. Dubai seems to be the spot now, right? So many crypto companies or high-profile crypto people or followed social crypto accounts opened an office there. Of course, mainly because of tax reasons, but still, it feels like Dubai as well as Singapore maybe feel like where things are happening. What do you think about this? Like, would it be better for a crypto project to open a small office there, to join into Web3 gatherings? Because I guess a couple of weeks prior, like even CZ of Binance says every other day there's a Web3 conference or whatever in Dubai. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, or a great point, I should say. And you're right, Dubai is definitely a hub of Web3 right now and productivity and everything like that. But I would say that, all of these people we're interviewing, one of the common threads is that it's just, and this is one of the cool things about Web3, is it's this global team and this global workforce. And that's one of the beauties of what Web3 allows for, is just, even things like payroll and more people being compensated in cryptocurrencies and that kind of thing. So do I think it's a benefit? Yeah. Do I think it's essential? Not necessarily. I mean, I'm based in a city where we don't even have really like, I think there is maybe a Bitcoin meetup, but like not a super popular one or anything like that. We've had like one crypto conference in this city in the last 2 years. But yet we still run a weekly podcast from here. So, and I know that's a small scale example. I would just say that it's maybe a feature, a benefit. Do I think it's absolutely essential to uproot, move to one of these cities that's a hub and start from there? If you don't need to be meeting with everybody in person on a regular basis, I think you can still do it from anywhere, but it may be a benefit.
But for a crypto company, though, not from a publisher point of view, but from a crypto perspective, would you advise a company, a crypto startup, for example, or maybe a little mature company to go there and have an office there, like a small one even? Not necessarily.
Potentially, if you have a core group of people that are working, that you really do, like, there's important things, like you need to be in the same time zone, you need to be meeting in person, and you see benefit even maybe from a culture perspective. But in my experience, a lot of these companies, yeah, they may have a head office somewhere, but the majority, like the vast majority of their workforce is spread out. And so, I mean, I just think that we're moving more and more that way in general, like even outside of crypto, of just this distributed workforce. But again, do I think it could be beneficial? Absolutely. It's just at what cost it takes to get there. Like if it's a major move to move a whole company there and there's all sorts of expenses, will it be worth it in the end? I don't know. I don't know if the benefit will outweigh there. But if it was a small move or something that wasn't totally inconvenient, of course, you'd be better off to be in kind of one of these cities, like whether it's in New York, a Dubai, wherever it's happening, that there's a big Web3 population for a crypto company.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Osman, for coming up and asking those. Wade, as we come to a conclusion here, do you want to cover everything that we haven't covered yet? Is there anything that's on your mind? And if there's not anything in particular, would you like to show us or tell us about what you're excited for or focused on in the crypto world?
Is there anything in the Web3 space that we haven't covered in this hour? Oh man, there's so many things. First off, I just want to reiterate having this opportunity to come here, chat. I hope, by the way, and feel free to just let Titan know himself. You don't have to reach out directly to me or anything, but I do want to know, hopefully I've provided a little bit of value, or I'd be happy to come back in the future if I am invited back. But what am I seeing in terms of trends and that type of thing? I think some of the things that are really interesting right now are, while we're in this kind of bear market of an NFT situation, like NFT values are going down, that kind of thing, there's still some interesting innovation in things like Web3 music and musicians finding ways to now monetize themselves through Web3. Whereas if you look at the traditional platforms and like how many streams they would have to get on Spotify to earn the money that they're earning from even having a small group, like 25 collectors of true fans who are buying their NFTs, and that may equate to 1 million streams on Spotify. And some of these economics that we're seeing kind of for the creator economy, I think that's going to be a huge push in the next bull market. I think that Troy hit the nail on the head with L2 development. What ZK Sync, now that they have their EVM, and we're seeing more and more that's going to happen on layer 2, because that's one of the big pain points is layer 1 Ethereum gas fees. That's a non-starter. When somebody's asked to pay, in a bull market, $80 for a basic transaction on Ethereum layer 1, that's going to push people away. I also think that if we go back to November, and the disaster that we had with FTX, I mean, all of us here know that they're two different things, that FTX is not blockchain, or is not Web3 decentralization. They were a centralized exchange. But what we have to remember again is coming back to the idea of the end user, the common person who's not really familiar with the crypto space or doesn't have that much knowledge of it. Many people just think FTX equals crypto, and this was a disaster. And so there's this earning of trust back that I think needs to happen a little bit as well. The final thing I'll leave with is just that right now, again, the people who are paying attention to the space, who are involved, those who have been around since 2013, you know this very well. You've been through bull markets, you've been through bear markets. Right now is a quiet time in the space, but this is when things get built. This is going to set the tone for the future adoption. And so everyone here is ahead of the curve, and I'm excited to be along for the ride and to see what happens.
Very cool. Yeah, that's very inspiring, and I couldn't agree more. I think this is build phase, and you know, all the paper hands have come and gone, and the real builders are here to stay. So it's very, very cool. Wade, where can people find you, follow you, and digest your podcast?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we are on YouTube, Show Me the Crypto. On Twitter, our handle is, I always got to remember because we didn't get the handle we wanted. It's just Show Crypto on Twitter, but that's our podcast, is Show Me the Crypto. We're also on Instagram, all of the vilified Web2 social media platforms. You can find us there. And Hive for a Web3 example as well. That's just my own Paterson Wade. But yeah, listen to an episode or two, just scroll through. You know, everyone's got their different style podcast. I fully realize that ours may or may not be for you, but would love for you to take a listen. And we're always open to feedback. And also, I will add, if there are kind of other solutions or like Web3 ways that we can be dabbling with. We've been asked a couple times, like, would we completely move off of YouTube and just go to like a decentralized solution? And going back to the reason I said before, I don't think we're interested in doing that at this point, because our goal is to educate as many people as possible. The reality is that there's more people we can reach on YouTube right now, but that's not in one or the other. Like, we are also interested in experimenting with different Web3 solutions as well. We want to be on the cutting edge there. So we'd love to hear feedback if you think there's potential for us to explore in that area. And thank you all for your attention over this last hour. It's been a treat to chat with you.
Very good. Do you have a lens handle, by the way?
I don't.
Good. Well, it's in beta, so you gotta DM the guys to get you one. But I'll do that, and I'll see if I can get you on the lens train, and you can just
awesome.
play around in that ecosystem. So. And then from there,
Cool.
obviously, you can head over, talk to Troy, and join in with the Xenon app with your lens profile as well. So that'd be kind of cool.
Very cool.
Wade, thanks so much for taking your time to come and join us. And we look forward to having you back anytime, really, in the future. And obviously, we do these every week, so we come and chit chat and have a conversation with our community. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much, Titan and group. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Right on.